Okay. Well, here we go. How come half the time when I push the button, it doesn't start streaming, and half the time it does start streaming? I don't know. But I'm here. How's it going, everybody? I am coming to you from my hotel room in Reno, Nevada today, where I had the distinct pleasure of visiting my 95-year-old grandmother, uh, who is in better shape than I am. She's just sharp as a tack, gets around great. I keep joking with her that she's uh, going to join the rugby team here pretty soon because she's just in such good shape. She's really an amazing lady, and we had a great time for I don't know 4 hours today, just chatting away, and she just is, so locked in and interested. And man, I hope to be in as good a shape as that by the time I'm, you know, 60, much less 95. She's just doing great. So anyway, it was a real pleasure to get a chance to spend some time with her. And so I'm sorry if I have been a little out of pocket. I've been traveling, as you know, for the speech in Yucca Valley, California. Was that just yesterday? Holy smokes. And then drove 8 hours to Reno to come see Grandma. And then tomorrow after church, I'm going to drive 8 hours back to Las Vegas to fly out. So that's fun, but worth it if I get to see Grandma. I mean, you got to take the chances you have to to see the people that you love. So I mean, how amazing is it to be 55 years old and still have a grandmother? So I am grateful for all of you and Yucky Valley. Yeah, no, not Yucky Valley. So let's get to the headlines here. We have a couple of breaking news items from Israel that I wanted to go over. Number one, Hamas says that an Israeli female hostage has been killed in North Gaza, and of course they say she was killed by Israeli airstrikes. We don't obviously don't know if it's true. The IDF says that they are investigating. That's all the information I can find on this right now. We don't know exactly who it is or anything else. Uh, it would be a little surprising if it is if she was actually in northern Gaza because uh, they believe that most of the living hostages are in central Gaza at this point. So I've got a lot of people that say they can hear me, and some people that are saying they can't, probably be just because I was not speaking there at the beginning. Let me just look here, check my levels. That's what I was doing. Hello. That's a little low. I'll turn it up. How's that? Turn up the input and let's try it over here. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's as high as I can get it. Maybe I can turn this up a little bit. Testing 1, 2. How's that? Better? More. Okay. That's as high as it goes. We're redlining now. Okay. Question: can there possibly even be more than 10 living hostages? Sincerely, well, there can be. They believe that there are probably about 40 living hostages, last I checked. And so I don't know. I mean, it's just hard to say. If there are, we thought that they would be arrayed around Yahya Sinwar, but now Sinwar's off the table. And so, yeah, they probably have them spread around with families in families' homes, and it's probably likely that they don't even know where all of them are. They wouldn't be able to find them. It would be very difficult for Hamas to actually find all of the hostages at this point because they've been moved around. And Hamas, we know for sure, does not really have much control anymore over Gaza. One of the ways we know that is because as the aid is going into Gaza, it's being taken by these criminal elements that are not Hamas. They're just families that are, you know, hijacking the aid and taking it. And Hamas is having to ask some of the other gangs or criminal elements inside Gaza to help them fight these families for the aid. And so they're out there fighting each other over the aid. And so there you go. Everybody complains about the audio. Problem is, I cannot, with this setup, I cannot monitor my audio except by looking at the levels. So I'm doing the best I can with the audio. And I'm in a hotel here. Oh, I wonder. Here, I'll turn these off. Okay. So I disabled some audio. Maybe that's better. I was trying to figure out how to actually monitor the audio of the little video clip I want to show you here tonight, but I couldn't get that to work. This setup is just maybe a little bit too complex for me. Okay, so yeah, I'm glad you can hear me. Okay, all right, good. So now the other piece of breaking news that we have today is has to do with we have the female hostage that was they say Hamas says is killed in Gaza, and there's a rabbi that went missing in Abu Dhabi, the UAE, and this guy's name is Zvi Kogan, and he's an emissary to Abu Dhabi's Chabad chapter. Now, if you aren't aware, Chabad is I call them the fun Jews. They're the Jews that like to have a good time. When you drive around Israel, you see these stickers on the back of almost um, every road sign. You see them stuck on the side of walls, uh, light poles everywhere that have their hero on it. This guy, I forget what they called him. Um, oh gosh, what did they call him? Anyway, uh, they the Chabad are dedicated to outreach. Okay, to explain it simply, it's a movement within Orthodox Judaism that focuses on spreading Jewish knowledge and practice, uh, making it accessible and fun to Jews everywhere, no matter their background. So on Fridays, you'll see them out uh, in the mornings. They'll be out with the speaker in front of a restaurant or out in the street, and they'll be encouraging Jews to come and pray and do things like that. Anyway, this guy was an emissary for the Chabad in Abu Dhabi, and he went missing on Thursday. They don't know exactly what happened to him, obviously, but nobody's had any contact with him. They think he may have been either kidnapped or murdered. They believe that he was being followed by Iranian intelligence operatives in Abu Dhabi. So that's obviously a problem. And the Israeli government has issued a travel warning for Jews and telling them not to go to the UAE right now and to be careful everywhere else. They say that this guy's car was found abandoned about 90 miles from Abu Dhabi. They're saying, without citing any sources, that officials suspect a number of Uzbek citizens assaulted the guy and then fled to Turkey. So they know quite a bit, I guess, about what happened. This rabbi is a dual Israeli Moldovan citizen. Moldova, there's a country for you. I've been there once. That's a crazy place. He has been living in Abu Dhabi since like 2020, and he, according to Ynet, he participated in the first ever Holocaust Remembrance Day in 2021. So, he's been doing his thing. He's been around for a few years now in Abu Dhabi and has disappeared. So they've been on high alert, or Israel has been on high alert around the world for Iranian efforts to harm Israelis in Europe and elsewhere, Middle East, ever since the attacks last October. And as far as I know, this is the first time that they think a Jew has been kidnapped or harmed in some way by Iranian intelligence or operatives, something like that. Now, so I'm trying to do too many things at once here. I'm trying to see if they've got questions. Yeah, the Rebbe. They call him the Rebbe. That's their Menachem Mendel Schneerson. Thank you, Heidi. That's him. That's the guy that they've got on the side of buildings and, light posts and everything all over the place. He's the late leader of Chabad. Okay, so those are the two big breaking news. Now, the other thing I wanted to do is a little bit of what I call answering idiots, because there's this video that came out a few days ago from Scott Ritter. He's always good for some content, that guy. And what a joker. And I wanted to just play for you. It's so ridiculous what he is saying that I want you to hear the whole thing. This clip is a minute and a half long, but I'm going to have you listen to the entire thing, and you're just going to be shaking your head in disgust. But then we'll come back and talk about it. Now, this guy that's interviewing him, I don't really know what his story is, but he's from Iran. So not only does Scott Ritter function as a mouthpiece for the Russian propaganda arm of the Russian government, but he's now doing regular interviews with some Iranian guy about how Israel is losing the war. And so we'll come back and talk about it in just a second after you listen to this clip. So check this out. This is so nuts. I mean, prepare to be, okay.
The current situation that they're facing right now in the southern part of Lebanon? Do they have upper hand in the southern part of Lebanon on the ground? I'm talking about.
No, they don't. They don't have the upper hand. They're losing. They're failing. It's not possible. Every time they try to push further in, they get beat. They have to withdraw. They lose tanks. They lose manpower. Eventually,
I'm going to stop it right there, and I'm just going to talk about. He's saying that the Israelis are losing in Lebanon. That every time they go in there, they get beat. That they're losing tanks. They're losing men. Well, here's the thing. Israel is very transparent about their losses. When an Israeli soldier gets killed, they don't hide it. They announce it as soon as they let the family know. Once they've alerted the family, they announce the death, and they have a running toll. There's a website out there that you can go and you can see what the current death toll is. It's somewhere around 350 something total since the war began. So that would make about a little over 700 soldiers that have been killed, including the ones who were killed on October 7th. But if you don't include those and just start counting when they invaded Gaza, they're about 350. Now, about 50 of those have been killed in Lebanon, in the fighting. So far, the death toll, the Hezbollah death toll in Lebanon, according to Hezbollah, is about 3,600. So even if we use their numbers, the statement that Ritter is making, that Israel is losing so badly, every time they go into Lebanon, they get beat back and they have to withdraw, and they're losing tanks and they're losing, men. Well, there's just no proof of that. There's no videos out there of any tanks being lost in Lebanon. I've only seen one actual tank kill video in the entire war, and that was in Gaza just about 2 weeks ago. You see a lot of videos that come out of a tank being struck with something. So they'll, the GoPro video it with Hamas operative or whatever, some dude in civilian clothes carrying an RPG launcher, and he goes, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, and then he pulls the trigger, and then you see kaboom on the tank. But they cut the video off right there as soon as it hits. And the reason that those tanks look like such a big ball of flame when the RPG hits is because they have that anti-rocket system on the tanks that has explosives that explode toward the rocket and detonate the rocket before it can hit the tank. And the Hamas videos that they put out of them striking these things never show the aftermath of that explosion. That's because those tanks are not being disabled. They're made to take hits from RPGs. They're made to do that. And so, like I said, I've only ever seen one video of an actual Merkava tank that got killed in Gaza. And we haven't seen any coming out of Lebanon. Now, I was just in Israel a couple weeks ago, well, 3 weeks ago, whatever it was. And we went up to the northern border. You see a lot of military equipment. Obviously, we can't film it. We can't show it because that would be telling bad people things they don't need to know. But we see it, and we see tanks coming and going. And let me tell you, from having spent 6 months in Ukraine, if there's a lot of tanks being blown up, you would see a lot of blown up tanks going by you, leaving the battlefield. And we are not seeing that coming out of Lebanon. So there is zero evidence that the Israelis are getting their heads handed to them inside Lebanon. Like I said, they've lost about 50 troops since they invaded Lebanon on the ground, 50 troops in Lebanon, okay? That's compared to over 3,600 on the other side of that equation. That is not losing. Now, let's go on and we'll listen a little more to this thing.
The current situation that they're facing right on the ground, I'm talking about.
No, they don't. They don't have the upper hand. They're losing. They're failing. It's not possible. Every time they try to push further in, they get beat. They have to withdraw. They lose tanks. They lose manpower. Eventually, sooner rather than later, Katz will have to acknowledge the same realities that Gallant had to deal with, that you're not winning in southern Lebanon. You're losing, that you're not getting 60,000 people back home. Tens of thousands more are fleeing because of the ongoing, and you can't stop the Hezbollah rockets. That's the reality. Israel can't stop the Hezbollah rockets. And Hezbollah can do this all day, all night, weeks, months, years if necessary.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it right there. Now, he's saying that the reason that they're losing is because there are still rockets flying out of Lebanon at Israel. He claims that there are tens of thousands of people that are continuing to flee the north. That's not true. We've seen no evidence of that whatsoever. Again, Ritter has not been to Israel lately, and not at all during this war. So he has no idea. I don't know where he's just making this stuff up, I think. I've been there. I've been to Haifa. People are still living there. They're going about their business. I don't see people fleeing. We've not heard, there's no evidence of that at all on the ground. And he's saying that Hezbollah is continuing to fire rockets into Israel. That's true. However, what they were saying is that once Israel invaded Lebanon, that Hezbollah would be firing thousands of rockets every day into Israel. And instead of thousands, we're seeing about 100. And they're disjointed. They're not organized. The numbers are declining. Okay. And so when you look at the actual experts like Sarit Zahavi and what she's saying about what's happening in the north, Hezbollah is being degraded. I mean, how can you look at what Israel did with Operation Grim Reaper? Just that one operation. How can you look at that and say that they're losing? How? I mean, they've taken out the entire chain of command of Hezbollah from like captain level up all the way to the top, and that's losing. So wait, what? They say that they've taken out. They're finding all these. Let's see if I can see the video here. Yeah, here's some video of some of the weapons that they're taking out, and they're finding tunnels, and they're destroying the tunnels. They're destroying the infrastructure left and right in Lebanon. How is that losing? Let me just say that talking to the people who are doing it, who are there, now he goes on to say that they're losing in Gaza. So let's take a listen to what he says there.
The current situation that
I got to fast forward here.
Sorry. What's going to collapse first? Hezbollah or Israel? And I don't mean Netanyahu government. I'm talking about Israel as a nation state. It's on very thin ice as we speak. Its economy is collapsing irrecoverably.
That's not true. Israel's economy is doing better than the U.S. economy.
Politically, you're looking at near civil war.
There's no civil war conditions in Israel. Anybody who's been to Israel will tell you that they're not looking at civil war
type conditions. Last week, people were talking about a coup, a potential.
There was no talk of a coup except by American media, who also is not in Israel.
Coup. That's the reality. But no one wants to admit the reality in Israel. Israel is a fundamentally defeated state.
Israel is a failed state. I wonder if Ritter has ever been to a failed state. I just came back from Haiti, and Haiti is a failed state. There's no government. There's no law to speak of. It's run by gangs. I've been to Somalia. Somalia is a failed state. There's no police at all. I mean, it's just there's just no government. Israel's economy is literally stronger than the U.S. economy right now, even in the midst of the war. They had a lot more sort of in reserve economically than the United States does. They have a lot less debt. They are getting plenty of help from the United States. And yes, it's been costly for their tourism sector and their manufacturing sector, their mining sector, because of the port being closed in Eilat due to the Houthi attacks. and things like that. It certainly has been costly for Israel, but they're not about to collapse. The government is functioning. The economy is functioning. There are people out shopping on the streets. There are people going about their business, even in the north. Ask any of the 44 people that we brought to Israel on our tour in October. And we took them to Jish, and up in the north. We took them to Sderot in the south. There are kids going to the swimming pool, even in Sderot. There are kids having church camp at the church in Jish in the north. There are people going to the beach every day in Haifa, which is, under daily assault. Okay, so this guy just literally does not have a clue. He's just making stuff up. And let's keep going, because it keeps getting better.
The current situation that
Go back to one.
But no one wants to admit the reality in Israel. Israel is a fundamentally defeated state. It's a failed state. It's a failing state.
It's a failed state.
And simply repeating the same failed policies of the past isn't a formula for resolving, this underlying reality. And the reality is that Israel, if things are left unchanged, Israel will collapse as a modern nation state.
So he says Israel will collapse as a modern nation state. Thank you, MM, by the way. It was good to see you at the thing in Yucca Valley. Thank you for making the effort to come all the way up from Arizona to see us. I really enjoyed talking with you. Who is Scott Ritter? Scott Ritter is a former ICC inspector. That's the what am I trying to say? The International Nuclear Inspector. Okay. And he really he's a former, colonel, I guess, from the U.S. Army. He never really did a whole lot with himself. I don't go. A lot of people like to bring up the fact that he was charged with, being a pedophile. I don't really go there. That's not germane to this conversation necessarily. When the war started in Ukraine, he was just consistently saying, Ukraine is going to lose, Ukraine is going to lose, Ukraine is going to lose. They're losing. He would say the same kinds of things you're hearing him say here at the very beginning of the war. He would say, Ukraine is not going to last another week. In 48 hours, Ukraine will collapse. Ukraine's forces are crumbling. And, I remember the day before the Ukrainian army retook the city of Kherson from the Russian forces, Scott Ritter was on TV talking about how in Kherson, in that region, that the Ukrainian forces were crumbling. The entire Ukrainian military was about to collapse. The government was going to flee, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, he's just been so wrong on everything since I started, hearing him back during the first part of the war in Ukraine, that I just follow the guy out of sheer morbid curiosity to hear what stupid things he's going to say next. And I mean, as far as Ukraine goes, he's just one of those guys that I don't know that he's in the pay of Russian propagandists. He may be. They have found that there are some commentators online who have been paid big money to speak out against Ukraine or against Israel, and paid by propaganda arms of either the Iranians or the Russians or the Chinese or whatever. I know that Tim Pool was one of those. Got paid like $90,000 an episode or something stupid like that to say the right things by some propaganda arm. And so I don't know if he's getting paid by some propaganda arm to come up with this garbage, But what I wonder is whether he actually believes it, or if he's just spouting this stuff because that's what his base wants to hear. I mean, obviously there is a subculture of people out there who wants to believe that Ukraine is terrible, they're corrupt, and they're going to lose this war and everything like that. But there's the same subculture of people who are very anti-Semitic, who desperately want Hamas or the Palestinians to win this conflict against Israel. And sometimes those are the same people, and sometimes they're people on different sides of the aisle. This is what has sort of pushed me to really cut ties with every political party, because you've got people on the far, far, far left who are just rabidly anti-Semitic, that just hate Israel and wish that they would disappear as a country, sooner rather than later. And then you have people on the far right who are exactly the same way, that say the same things as the people on the far left. So I'm starting to see that it's not so much of a continuum from left to right as it is a big circle. And the further left you go, if you go too far left, you end up on the far right. That's strange to me, but that's just what I have found. And that's one of the reasons that I've just sort of like sworn off the politics of it. And I just try to focus on the morality of it. Okay. So let's see here. Question: is he on YouTube? And if so, how is he not demonetized? Well, yes, he is on YouTube a lot. And I don't know if he's monetized or not. I can't see that. And being demonetized doesn't mean that you can't continue to post on YouTube. It just means you can't make money from posting on YouTube. So, yeah, Tim Pool was actually, they found out he was being paid. And he claims that he did not know that the people who were paying him were propagandists. They were, but if somebody's paying you and telling you what you're going to say about a certain topic, there's a clue for you. Now, 90,000 an episode? Okay. I mean, that's quite a bit of money. And you got to, if somebody's willing to pay you that much to tell you what to say, then maybe you should ask questions about what you're being asked to say. But he didn't, apparently. So anyway, 90,000 an episode. Where do I get that? Sign me up. From where are NATO troops pulled? Okay, good question, Sandra. NATO troops come from NATO countries, NATO member countries. And but I think what you're actually asking is not about NATO troops, but you're asking about UN troops. Now that's different. The United Nations and NATO are two totally different things, right? The United Nations based in New York, NATO based in Strasbourg or Brussels or someplace. And so if you're asking about UN, like UNIFIL troops in southern Lebanon, they are pulled from UN members who volunteer their troops they offer their troops to go and act as peacekeepers. So, for example, I was in Haiti a couple weeks ago. There is a UN mission there. Well, it's not official, but it's semi-official UN mission that is made up of Kenyan troops. And in southern Lebanon, you're not going to find any American troops, because that would be a real provocation to the Hezbollah people that they're supposed to be keeping an eye on down there. And so they bring troops in from Ireland and Senegal, and believe it or not, China, and a whole bunch of Chinese troops that were right on the northern Israeli border, that supposedly there to keep an eye on Hezbollah, what do you think they were actually doing? Now they know, because they're finding all these Hezbollah bases and tunnel complexes and rocket arrays and all these things right next to UNIFIL bases. So, as you know, they're talking about this ceasefire that Amos Hochstein from the United States was in Israel and Lebanon this last week, talking to officials, trying to get them to sign on to the ceasefire idea. The whole idea pivoted on UNIFIL and Lebanese troops enforcing a region south of the Litani River that would have no Hezbollah troops and no Israeli troops in it. Now, this goes back to the UN resolution called 1701. And I'm just want to check the date. UN resolution 1701 was instituted in 2006 after the 2006 Lebanon war. And its primary purpose was to end the hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah. And it called for Hezbollah to stop attacking Israel, and for Israel to leave Lebanon, and for Hezbollah to move all of their troops north of the Litani River, which is 10 or 15 miles from the border with Israel. They never did it. The UNIFIL troops, UNIFIL is the United Nations interim force in Lebanon, which was there since the 1970s. And they were supposed to be managing this and making sure that Hezbollah stayed north of the Litani River. They never did. They never left. The UNIFIL forces never did their job. They probably were collaborating with Hezbollah. And we also know that the Lebanese military is rife with people who are playing both sides of that fence. They're Lebanese army soldiers by day and Hezbollah operatives by night, or they have family who's in Hezbollah. And that's why it's so crazy. You've heard me talk about this before, if you've watched this show, that the United States gives more than $300 million a year to the Lebanese army. Most of it is in the form of military equipment, Humvees, armored personnel carriers, stuff like that. And that stuff makes its way to Hezbollah. The money and the equipment makes its way to Hezbollah. So the United States taxpayer is funding Hezbollah. On top of that, we give about $300 million a year to the United Nations interim force in Lebanon to keep them out there doing nothing. Okay? So there's almost $750 million a year being wasted in Lebanon. And now Amos Hochstein is traipsing around, is gallivanting around in Lebanon and Israel, trying to basically create a ceasefire that's the exact same agreement that they had since August 2006 that never worked. And so Israel is saying, yeah, okay, we'll agree to that again. But this time we reserve the right to strike inside Lebanon anytime we see a threat inside Lebanon, and to continue to blockade the border between Syria and Lebanon so that Iranians cannot continue to ship weapons into Lebanon for them to attack us with. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. And so Hezbollah is like, yeah, no, we're not going to go for that part. We don't like that part. Now, on another note, let me just reiterate, since we got 2,300 people online or whatever, please go hit the like button. I appreciate it when you all do that. Also, it would be great if you'd go over to chuckholton.com. And if you like this reporting, you want to see more of this and enable us to put out more content for you, you can go and become a supporter at chuckholton.com. You'll get lots of free stuff. We've got our coffee table book is going to be coming out shortly. And So we got a lot of cool stuff coming up. And so if you would like to support us over there, that's the place to do that. Go to chuckholton.com, become a supporter, and you can start downloading some of the manuscripts of my most recent book, Death of Civilization, and also the one about called the Grace Project, about helping your church put together a crisis intervention team. Okay, so on another note, let's talk about the Houthis for a minute. I haven't talked about them in a while, but they've continued to make a nuisance of themselves in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden and the Bab el-Mandab Straits down there. There are still a U.S. Flotilla down there that is supposed to be stopping them from attacking shipping in the Red Sea, and they're doing that with limited results, to say the least. The United States has been striking back. There was a massive drone strike and missile strike against, I think it was the USS Abraham Lincoln, just last week, where the Houthis fired like several dozen munitions at this U.S. aircraft carrier. None of them found, a home there, but it certainly was a big attack on the ship. And in retaliation, the United States struck a few targets inside Yemen. We need to probably put those B-52s to work that we have over in Qatar right now. A dozen B-52s flying over Yemen and carpet bombing would really send a message. Now, obviously, that would meet with a lot of opprobrium from the world body, because it would, without a doubt, result in civilian casualties. That's the problem, is that all of these cowardly terrorist organizations hide behind civilians. And this is what I was getting at. Like, I'm not going to approach this from a political standpoint. My politics are irrelevant. I try to approach these things from a moral standpoint. Point, period, end of story. What is the right thing? Who's in the right, who's in the wrong? The bottom line is Israel was not attacking Lebanon or Gaza on October 6th, 2023. Therefore, everything that's happened after October 7th is the fault of the attackers, which is the Palestinians and Hezbollah and Iran. So this is what I was getting at with in the Red Sea. Apparently, an Iranian ship that was supposedly carrying munitions to deliver to the Houthis suddenly disappeared, and they haven't been able to find it. And the Iranians don't know what happened to their ship now. And they think that perhaps the United States either captured it or sunk it on the high seas. And so that's all the information we have about that right now. But it's kind of an interesting little tidbit to show you that the United States is still working in the region. And what I wonder is, and this is what I'd like to ask you to answer in the chat, what would you like Donald Trump to do about the Houthi problem? What would be the right thing to do? Again, let's just talk about what's moral and what's right. Because the Houthis continue to create shenanigans or commit shenanigans against Israel. My internet went out there for a second. Internet went out. Because the Houthis have continued to commit shenanigans against Israel, what is the right thing to do? What should Donald Trump do when he takes office? Should he just carpet bomb the parking lot that is Yemen? Should he send in troops, boots on the ground? Should he take the handcuffs off of our Navy and let them put a little more of their firepower to work? making it more costly for the Houthis to do this? Or should he go after Iran directly, who is facilitating all of this mayhem? And what would you do if you were Donald Trump's advisor? My friend Sebastian Gorka just got tapped to be Donald Trump's counterterrorism advisor, and I have a direct line to him. I've got his cell phone number, and so I could call Sebastian Gorka and say, "Hey, here's what my people are saying that Trump ought to do in Yemen." So maybe we'll get your opinion in front of the new president when he takes office. Mugiwara Luffy says, "Why pick? All options are good." Okay, we'll just call Iran ahead of time. So, what's right for Yemen? Well, you know, the Houthis were not. They're not a elected body inside Yemen. The Houthis are a rebel group that took over from the elected government in Yemen. So maybe the best thing to do for Yemen would be to mount an operation to unseat the Houthis. And we wouldn't need a lot of troops to do that. As a matter of fact, it would be much cheaper to hire Eric Prince to put together a group of contractors to go in and support the legitimate Houthi government, to restart the hostilities against the Houthis, and retake the country from the Houthis and put it back into the hands of the legitimate government inside Yemen. That's one thing that he could do. I tend to side with Eric Prince on his ideas about what to do in most of those things, because he has a real good sense for the cheap and effective way to get things done in terms of foreign policy. And very often the US government goes for the costly and inefficient method instead. And so I like Eric's ideas. Okay, so let's see here. Go answer some more of your questions real quick. My internet kind of died for a second. That was weird. Question. Aerial attack, you think? I should put up a poll on that, but I can't do all these things at once. Trump should tell Bibi to do what you need to do. Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, if you have any other questions, thank you, Mama Marissa. There's the links to my books and my locals page there. As we come up to the holidays here, I'm not going to be running around as much as I normally do, but I am going to be running around right after Thanksgiving. The plan is to make a short trip to Ukraine to go out with a chaplain friend of mine over there and try to bring some good cheer to the troops that are on the front lines. So if you're, stay tuned. And obviously, that's an expensive trip, but we want to try to encourage the people that have been out there fighting for almost 3 years now. And they're obviously, this is a very dark period in the war. The Ukrainians are still definitely, they are committed to seeing this through one way or another, and they're not going to roll over and give up their country. But things are hard in Ukraine right now, and so if you want to see what's going on the ground, I'll be bringing you some on the ground reporting in the week or so after Thanksgiving from Ukraine. Okay, and if you'd like to support getting us over there and helping us out with all that, just go to chuckholton.com, and we will get a chance to give away some of the donations we get to people who are in need over there out near the front lines. All right. Question, what are some of the better organizations if we want to support Israel? I always point people to www.serveisrael.com. There are many others, but that's one easy one. And those guys are helping people who really need it inside it. You know, there's not, like, contrary to what Ritter says, Israel is not a failed state. Their economy is not collapsing. So Israel has social programs to help the people who are displaced or put out of their homes for the time being. And so they're not starving to death. But if there's anybody who is hurting in Israel, then the guys at Hayovel, www.serveisrael.com, are doing stuff to help those guys. And it's mostly the farmers who really have lost a lot of their labor and their foreign labor. And so they're losing everything because they can't harvest their crops or plant their crops and that sort of thing. What do you think Trump's policy will be regarding Ukraine? Isabel, good question. Well, you know, he talked a big game during the election cycle about, you know, cutting off aid to Ukraine because he was pandering to the people, I think, short-sighted people on the right, that, and was, you know, trying to ensure he had their votes. But what he said since he got elected has been a little more reasonable, and that makes me happy. I have talked about this at length on previous lives, but I believe that there's a way that he could stop sending so much tax money to Ukraine, but at the same time still help Ukraine win the war. And he could do that by taking money out of Russia's pocket rather than putting money into Ukraine's pocket. And it would have essentially the same effect. So, question, Jose says, why don't you invite him on your channel? Who, Trump, or are you talking about Scott Ritter? I wouldn't bother putting Scott Ritter on my channel. I'm not going to give him the time of day. I mean, like I say, he's just a propagandist. The stuff that he's saying is easily refutable. And if you talk to anybody who's been in Israel and show them that clip, they're going to just shake their head and be like, who is this joker? This guy's an idiot. Because if you go to Israel, and you don't have to be an expert on anything, all you have to do is just go there. We took 44 civilians to Israel on our tour in October. And if you ask any of those people, and they're not geopolitical experts by and large, they would be able to look at that clip and just go, what? Who is this guy? I mean, what is this guy talking about? So, yeah, yeah, Joe, that's not appropriate. Let's keep the profanity out. Thank you, Mama Marissa, appreciate that. We don't do profanity on this one, folks, because we got mixed company. I don't know about you, but I was raised by parents and grandparents who taught me that there are certain words that men might use when they are alone with a group of with other men, but when you are in mixed company, as a point of respect for the people that you're with, you don't talk like that. And call me old-fashioned, but I think it's classless and base and pedantic to use language like that, especially in mixed company. I mean, look, words mean things, folks. And if you're just spouting profanities and vulgarities because you're too lazy to actually use words to describe what you actually mean. So if you're going to resort to scatological words in order to, try to shock people with what you're saying, what that tells me is that you're not intelligent enough to use proper English and to describe what you're trying to say the right way. Now I'm getting on my hobby horse here, and I don't really mean to, but the English language is such a powerful language, and it has the ability to describe things in ways that are so creative And you can, like I say, calling somebody a jackwagon, I mean, what does that even mean? But that's one of those things that, like, it's a creative thing that you can employ to get your point across without being offensive, right? And people who are too lazy to do that just have to interject profanities and vulgarities, especially scatological humor, is just that just rubs me the wrong way. And so I'm, look, I'm not the clean look. There, Sergeant Holton. I was in the Army for 8 years. Okay, so it's not like I'm, holier than thou. Sergeant Holton's still in there somewhere, but I try to be disciplined enough that when I'm in mixed company, that I'm going to respect the people around me enough not to use words like that. Okay. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off on a tangent there, but it just bugs me, Now, let me reiterate before we go the main points of this live, and that is the two things. First of all, Hamas says that an Israeli female hostage has been killed in North Gaza in a strike by Israel. We don't know any more information than that, but a spokesman for Hamas armed wing said on Saturday that a place that had been struck by Israeli forces had contained a female Israeli hostage who has been killed. So if we get more information on that, we will, put that out as well. The second thing is that a Jewish rabbi in the UAE who's been there for several years, he's a joint Israeli Moldovan resident, citizen, a resident of the UAE. He's a member of Chabad, which is the fun Jews, as I like to say. He's disappeared, and they don't know if he was murdered or if he was kidnapped, but they found his vehicle about 90 miles away from where he lives, and nobody's heard from him since Thursday. So there's that. Melissa Williams says, what does the United States supply to Yemen that benefits the Houthis? If we know that, we may be able to get an idea what President Trump can withhold from Yemen. We don't provide anything to Yemen. So there's not much. The only thing we could provide to them that might discourage the Houthis is ordnance. Okay. Okay. Well, that's all I've got for today, folks. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great Sunday. So I probably won't be on tomorrow because I'll be driving. I might do a short live just while I'm driving back to Las Vegas, because you all, with your generosity, provided me with a Starlink, and I used it yesterday just as an experiment. I stuck the Starlink satellite dish thing in the back window of my rental car as I was driving up from Yucca Valley, California, up 395 to Reno. And I had amazing internet the entire way. No dead spots, no downtime. It was incredible. And you're supposed to like aim that dish in just the right direction and all this. And I didn't do any of that. I just threw it up in the back window and plugged it in, and off we went, and it worked great. So thank you again to all of you who donated to get me that Starlink, and I'm going to try to put it to use to bring you more interesting content that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise because of that. And so, folks, if you want to go and see the speech that I gave at the men's breakfast yesterday, you can look here on YouTube, and I cut out all the songs and worship and everything and just put in my speech so you can watch it. In the speech, I talk about a mission that we did in Syria where we got into a near ambush and almost died. And if you want to hear the entirety of that story and actually see, I talk about it in the speech, that I actually have video of the entire mission that I was talking about. And I put that whole video together so you can see what actually happened and how we rescued a wounded Kurdish soldier after 3 attempts. It was really touch and go. But you can see that by going to chuckholton.com and becoming a supporter. The reason that I can't make that viewable to everybody is because there is some video in there that I can't have like out there on the internet that's just available to the public at large. So you're going to have to be a supporter to see the video, but you can watch the speech I gave about that mission here on YouTube, and you don't have to be a supporter or anything. Okay. So thank you again for watching. God bless you. We'll see you again next time. Take care.